It raises its club above its head, bellows a mighty roar, and hits you for 48 damage. Your character struggles, drops to the floor, dead. It swings around, it blocks your first blow, it blocks your second blow, it counters with one of its legendary actions. Great big rents of stone reach up and crush your body for 112 damage. Your character breathes their last, their eyes slowly growing dim as the life force is ebbed from them. That leaves just you. You are the only one left. What do? You start running. Great idea. Absolutely great idea. It runs after you. It then opens its mouth and this gout of acid sprays out over you. You take, 88 damage. And as your screams join the bubbling, hissing sound of your body dissolving into the green-greyish liquid, you all die. It is a total TPK. Wait, what? Hello and welcome to this week's episode of How to Be a Great GM. My name is Guy and we are talking about TPKs. Total Party Kill. Now, total party kill is a term that's been around for a very long time. And of course, it refers to the idea that all of the PCs within your role-playing group die in a situation that may or may not have been avoidable. Now, we're not talking about who's to blame when it comes to TPKs. Is it the GM's fault for making the monsters too strong? Is it the player's fault for having their characters charge in and not take stock of the situation? Is it the dice who they just decided everyone should die? We're not looking at why TPKs happen, and we're not looking at how to avoid them. We're looking at what to do when they happen. And they do happen from time to time. I have had a few TPKs in my time. Not a lot, because I'm one of those GMs who will throw as many lifelines as humanly possible. And I generally play with players who are a big mix of individuals, but some are very cautious and some are a bit more aggressive. And so usually there's one or two that are left alive. That's almost worse, by the way, than a TPK, but that's not the purview of this video. We're talking today about what to do with TPKs. Okay, so the most important thing, I think anyway, when it comes to TPKs is what are the good points about a TPK? And what are the bad points about a TPK? And what should you not do when it comes to TPKs? And then how do you recover once it's happened? So that's what we're going to be looking at. Those are the 4 points we're going to be looking at today. So let's talk about the bad. Obviously, the bad stuff. That's the easy stuff, right? So when it comes to talk about the bad stuff about a TPK, if a TPK is meaningless, if it's the PCs just happen to be on a ship and they are doing something, and as GM, you've had the Kraken attack the ship, and the PCs, instead of protecting the ship, were swimming in the ocean trying to kill the Kraken, and the Kraken actually causes the ship to sink. The PCs are stranded in a gigantic ocean which, by the virtue of the story, they are 150 miles in all directions away from land, and there's no flotsam or jetsam left, and they start being picked off by sharks, and eventually they all die. That's a meaningless end. It really is a very anticlimactic end, especially if they were on their way to fight a giant monster or to save the universe, and it just so happens that circumstances cause their death. So a bad thing is that it can be meaningless. And if it's meaningless, people won't remember necessarily that campaign. They'll go, I mean, we've all watched Game of Thrones final season, right? It's kind of like, yeah, okay. We don't want that to happen in our game. It can also feel like a complete waste of time. Why did we just spend 8 years of our lives following the journeys of these characters to have them die in a freak accident where the assassin that was meant to just be a bit of fun, the poison worked through all of the players, they all rolled badly, all the player characters rolled badly, and they all died. That's so much a waste of my time. Why am I playing this game? We also don't want that. Now, a good player will say, it's not a waste of my time, it's a tragic end, and the journey getting there was fun, but there will still be a feeling that it's a waste of time. And of course, it could also feel very unsatisfactory. Wait, the random encounter just killed our party because we decided not to take weaponry with us, and this encounter is narratively justified, or isn't narratively justified, it's just a random encounter. then what happens is it's unsatisfactory and blame starts to get pointed at people. Blame is the most insidious outcome of a TPK because that starts to cause rifts between you and your players, and we don't want that at all. No one likes to be accused of, well, it's your fault that we all died. It was a Leroy Jenkins moment, but everybody else had the choice to follow in or not. So very seldom is it one person's specific fault, and even if it is, well, you want to then try and downplay that. People make mistakes. We all get excited and push fire on the Death Star whilst all our allies are on the planet still. We know the outcome. So that's the bad side of things. And I'm sure there are others that you can think of, but primarily meaningless, waste of time, and unsatisfactory leading to blame. That's what we want to avoid. What's the good side of a TPK? Is there a good side to a TPK? Oh, yes, there is. There absolutely is. A good side of a TPK is it's educational, at the very least. The party will go, whoa, okay, that's interesting. So this was because we rushed in instead of making a plan. Maybe next time we should make a plan. This is because in this world setting, which we're unfamiliar with, you should never, let a Wookiee lose at a game of chess or Djarik or whatever, Anyway, my nerd fails me. The idea is that you can learn from these things. Now, I will never forget, I was in a game where we went in and we all died because of poison. And the particular type of poison, later on, we asked the GM, well, how are you supposed to defend against that? Because it's quite a specific poison, and the only antidote was to, on your turn, immediately drink a potion that would protect you against the poison for that ingestation. But it's an airborne poison, so you have to breathe. So every round you were basically drinking one of these potions. It's like, do you mean to tell us that effectively we just have to go in with like 30 potions and drink a potion every round? That's educational for the GM to realize that they're just being silly. One or two potions, maybe. Or if the wound is inflicted in a different way, maybe. But every turn? So they can be educational either for the players or for the GM or the DM. So you should look at that. Another thing is, and I know this is a petty thing, and I'm saving the best reason for last, by the way. Another thing is, does enforce authority and realism. I'm joking about the authority part. The players should respect the GM for being a GM by virtue of the fact that they're willing to do extra work. But if you are going to have a TPK, it certainly makes the players sitting at your table realize that you are not someone who is going to take away player agency for stupid. You're not going to hold your punches if the players have done something that has warranted their deaths. And you are quite satisfied to allow deaths to happen if that's what the rules and the dice and the narrative lead to. This can and has been leveled against me many times, that people just wouldn't be afraid of doing things in my game. I run a very narrative game, absolutely I do. And I will, as I have said before, do everything in my power within the rule space and within the narrative confines to try and save the party. But what I won't do is something that just causes the entire world or the physics to break so that the party can carry on living after they've done a silly thing. I will let them have a TPK. So it is a valuable tool to have. You don't want to have a TPK every single 3 or 4 sessions. You definitely don't want that. But you can draw some benefit from a TPK from time to time. Now, the main benefit of a TPK, as far as I'm concerned, is for the heroic, tragic ending. If the TPK results because the party are on a starship and the only way to save the entire galaxy or the planet or the population or the 12 orphans or whatever is for them to drive that starship into the heart of the sun and all get destroyed, that is an incredibly meaningful TPK. That is an amazing experience, where your players sit back and go, well, we all died, but we saved the universe. You have to, as the GM, make sure that they do save the universe. If you have them driving into the sun, and as they're dying, they receive a communication from the villain going, I have other weapons. You've just delayed the inevitable. You are failures. You've just taken all of the joy and all of the wonderment away from that TPK and just turned it into basically, I wanted to end the campaign. You don't want that. So those are the good and the bad aspects of TPKs. Now, what do you do once they have occurred if it's going to be a meaningless event? I have been speaking about letting it happen, bear this in mind. But how could you prevent a TPK from occurring? How could you make that not be meaningless? How could you make it have value? Or how could you avoid it altogether so there is still the educational element, but you can move on? Well, in my opinion, firstly, you shouldn't. You should never break your own rules. So if you have narratively set up that the players are going to fly into the sun and all die and there's nothing they can do about it, that's absolutely fine. Don't suddenly have a mysterious solution come up out of nowhere. Deus ex machinima, as they call it, the act of God. Do not do that. Do not intervene. Do not break your own rules. Role-playing wise, rule book wise, or narratively wise. You can use NPCs if they are around and you have established that they are around. But if you have an NPC who has hated the party from the very beginning and is a prisoner, and the NPC suddenly says, wait, I'll fly the starship into the sun. You've convinced me you're good people and you shouldn't die. It's tenuous. But at least you had an NPC there, and at worst, the NPC could very well escape, take control of the ship, but then cause some kind of sabotage to happen that lets them fly into the sun whilst the PCs escape on escape pods. So that's a clever way of using an established NPC. So seed them. Seed them. NPCs are your friend. Sometimes GMs don't like to have NPCs hanging around the party. They are useful. You could, and this is said with the greatest of caution and warnings. Once the party's all dead, you go, and now you wake up. It was all a terrible dream. You haven't yet journeyed down into the valley to face the horde of ogres that you so wrongly believe that you will be able to overcome. Your companions doze quietly next to you, and the fire is but a glowing ember, a memory of last night's jollity and jovial enjoyment. Perhaps you shouldn't go into that valley full of ogres unprepared. You turn it into a dream sequence. You can do it once every 10 years, I think, for the same party, and that's about it. And if the party go in anyway and they have a TPK, well, at least you tried. I advise extreme caution when using that. It is very much a get out of jail card. It's not free, I don't think. It is a testimony. Do it right, though. Give them consequences. You are haggard from the nightmare. You can't make them all have it, but then justify why that character had a dream of such vivid and lucidity, and give them dreams in the future of other things that are yet to come to pass. They don't have to have role played through it and then you undo it. You could be clever and try and predict future actions. So if you're going to use a dream to get out, make sure that you then use dreams later on so that it doesn't just feel like the GM was pressing the I'm going back to my last save point kind of moment. But again, preventing it, undoing it, retroactively redoing stuff, making them pass saving throws, don't do it. Don't do it. So what do you do once it's happened? That is the final point I want to talk to you about. And when it has finally happened, here's another piece of advice. Don't make it a dream sequence unless you've established that. I know, I have literally just said make it a dream sequence if you want to get out of it. I'm now saying to you, don't make it a dream sequence. So can you get how critical it is that if you do make it a dream sequence, if you do just give them a free out, that it's going to cost you narratively? There is an option similar to a dream sequence where the characters do wake up, but now they're in whatever purgatory or hell is part of your world setting, and the campaign now shifts to them journeying back to their real lives, such as sort of like Dante's Inferno type story, where they need to get back and reclaim the lives that they have wrongly lost, or just to prove that they are of value and shouldn't be in Hades. So you could continue the story that way. I have done that once before, and it actually turned out to be an incredibly amazing adventure where the PCs face their darkest fears and become better PCs personally as a result until eventually they come out into the wide world. So that can work. Again, once per 10 years is probably as much as you can do it. The greatest success that I have ever had, however, when it comes to a TPK, is to start the players with new characters, but in the same world, and to make reference to their old character's death and the impact it had on the world. An NPC comes up to your new group of player characters and says, "My son, blessed be, he went off with a group of his friends to try and fight the ogres in the valley. He ain't come back yet for 3 weeks. I'm worried. Wouldn't you go and see what's happened?" The party goes off to investigate their own tragic story. The ogres have moved out of the valley because you're not an idiot. And they discover a trail. The corpses, they find one corpse of one of the players, but it's got some mystery wrapped around it. Someone came back and appears to have resurrected them for a few moments or a few days. Or one of the corpses is not there. The rest, where's that corpse gone? It's a whole new campaign about discovering what has happened to their previous player characters. It's a lot of fun and something that you can do. Again, if your party is prone to TPKing every 3 months, you're going to run out of solutions, and sometimes you will just need to start again. So, how or what do we then look at for today's task? Today's task is a complicated one, and I advise you use it with caution, but if you have TPKs on a regular basis, or if you feel that you really want to flex your muscles as a GM, have your next adventure have a setup where the party is almost guaranteed to die. I'm not saying you have to try and kill them, but I'm just saying set it up that death is a very real reality. Then turn it into a dream sequence at the very end. Before you set up this next adventure, though, as being a TPK, have one of the characters have a dream about something that's going to happen in the adventure that you're currently running. A little bit of foresight, perhaps. This is campaign changing, by the way, so if you've been playing a campaign for years, please do not do this. But if you play regular one-shots, or if you've got a campaign that is going in various directions, you want to try this, try and set up a TPK. Alternatively, get your group to do a couple one-shots where you test this technique. I don't think TPKs are something that are going to happen a lot. If they do, there's a lot of things going on in your group, and maybe then you should actually practice this. That is the task. Let me know if you did it and what the outcomes were if you did. Bear in mind, I'm not responsible for your players considering you to be a base, measly, miserable, nasty DM for attempting to kill their player characters. That's it from me. Today's sponsor, well, you're going to want to check this out because making a TPK might be a little bit easier or hopefully more difficult with this week's sponsor. The sponsor of this week's episode is Combat Folio. I've got to sneak around the side here. What a wonderfully stunning box it is. And they sponsor the video. Now, what is Combat Folio? Well, they're currently running a Kickstarter. And I have to say that I really like their products. I'm going to open the box here. This is the box that comes in. And you can see that there's some interesting things inside here. So there are some markers. Yep, great permanent mark, well, not permanent markers, I should say. That's important. There's a little itty tiny dice bag, and that's something else. Then there's this bigger plastic waterproof bag, which I really appreciate. But then there is the actual Combat Folio, and this is the part that I find particularly cool. So there are two options. There is the hardboard option, and there is the flexi, super thin option, okay? They're both exactly the same. And what they have is obviously they've got some nice tracking information, initiative, effects that have been applied to the character or the NPC. You can keep track of all kinds of buffs and things like that, whether they've had a short rest or a long rest or what the time of day is and so on and so forth. I really like that. Obviously, you can mark them all with these markers that they have. But I suppose something else that I particularly like This is just me getting a marker. So you can write the player's name, obviously, and then my initiative is 10, and I have 15 HP. I don't have any temporary HP. I don't have any damage yet, and etc., etc., etc. So you can fill in all of this information. Now, the markers themselves come with a little fuzzy tip. No, computer says no. Come on. No, all right. Comes with a little fuzzy tip, which allows you to erase easily enough, or you could use a dry erase and so on and so forth. But on the back, I particularly like this one. So this is specifically designed for 5th edition, and on the back you can see all of the conditions that are normally affecting characters and things, and plus all of the other bits and pieces. So and what I like is, of course, the symbols all match across. So the symbols up there match the symbols here, so it's easy enough to keep track of. It is made by Nerd Motel, and I have to say that the quality of this board is pretty damn fantastic. So if you are someone who struggles to keep track of initiative and you want some sort of system that works really well for you, I like this one. This obviously is the flat version. It's more portable. Not that this board is not particularly portable, but the flat version definitely more flexible, more portable, but identical. So I really like that. Their Kickstarter is already running. This is something that I think is really useful. Could you put it on a piece of paper? Yes, you could. Is it as neatly laid out? Yes. Well, not on your piece of paper, it wouldn't be. I mean, I know I have bits of scrap paper all over the place with initiatives written on it and HP of monsters and things. This would solve that problem. And all of the extra bits and pieces that come with it are quite fun. The carry bag, which is quite nice for that. And then the final thing, and I think this is just always for cool bonus, I guess, is it comes with less dice now, but a little handful of rubber dice. Go and watch the Kickstarter video. They're made out of rubber, so they're bouncy as all hell. They are standard D20 size, I think, but also they act as an eraser on the board itself. So you can erase out with these dice whilst throwing them around. So you can get an upgrade on your backer kit, or early bird, I think, gets them as well. So they sponsored today's show. Thanks a lot to them for doing that. I really do appreciate that. Go and support their project. Link down below as to the Kickstarter itself. And yeah, something that's really cool and really fun. Another big thank you, of course, to you for watching all the way through to the end, and to our Patrons who continue to support this channel and make it possible. Massive thank you to all of you. Until next time, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming.